If you've been online lately, you've probably heard that running a business is super easy and anyone can do it. Well, that's complete nonsense. We're here to share with you the real world of entrepreneurship. Welcome to I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This.
Hello and welcome to I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This. I'm Rachael Wonderlin, your host, and I'm here with
Natalie DePaz,
my co-host and operations manager, marketing director, right-hand lady, and doer of things at Dementia by Day. She loves that title.
I do. I really love being called the doer of things. It has a nice ring to it.
Yeah. And of course, we are joined by our lovely guest today, Kyle Hupman, who also does many things.
Hi, yeah, happy to be here.
What do you do, Kyle? Tell us what you do.
So my job is called a sound mixer. I record audio for commercials, TV shows, and movies. That's kind of how I make money to do all my other projects. The original goal, of course, was to be a writer and director of movies.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, when I was in high school, like that was the dream. That was the goal. Like I'm gonna be, the next Steven Spielberg,
Heck yeah.
next George Lucas. Just obsessed with those guys. And then in film school, I was like, oh, nobody's gonna hire a 22-year-old to direct a multi-million-dollar feature film. I gotta figure something else out. It's like now. At 34, I feel like people might actually hire me to be a writer or director, but 10 years ago, no chance.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with a new plan, and I didn't want to be a barista or serve tables. So I was like, okay, I guess I could try a technical position. Like what is something that is necessary that nobody wants to do? Well, who is the bass player of the film industry? And it's the sound guy. It's like nobody wants to do it, but every single set needs one.
Why does no one want to do it?
There's no glamour. The glamour is the director. The glamour is the director of photography, cinematographer. The sound is like... There can be glamour to it, like Wicked, like they're doing all the singing live. Like, that's cool. That's when you get to have the glamorous sound job. I record commercial audio about people talking about methane or paint or stuff like that, So it's not that exciting, but it is necessary, and it's a big part of any, selling anything is you need advertisements. So
And it pays the bills, and it fuels your vision.
Exactly. That was the biggest revelation I had a couple years ago, was that by establishing myself in Pittsburgh as one of these technicians, I was able to work, but then I was also able to have time for myself, because the film industry, at least the way I do it, is gig work. So I'll next week I'll work 2 jobs, but then technically for the rest of the year I'm unemployed. Like I won't go the whole year unemployed, but I only get calls 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So it's a lot of unknown, I guess, working in this industry.
That was something that, and you both know that I was a film actress when I was a kid. And even at 10 years old, I realized, unless I end up on a soap opera or I get lucky and I make it big, make it on a movie set, once the job ends, like the commercial ends, the video ends, which is mostly what I did, that's it, and you're back and you're hunting again. So you're always sort of you're in feast or famine mode all the time. And even at 10 years old, I was like, this is really hard. Like you have to get lucky, you have to get a good break early, because otherwise you're constantly on the hunt for what you're doing next.
Yeah, I mean, even right now in Pittsburgh, we have Mayor of Kingstown is filming, I think it's season 4 right now.
Yeah.
So all of those technicians are going to be employed, until the summer. But then after that, it's like, if season 5 comes, they'll get work back. If it doesn't, it's just a big question mark for everybody. And I think something that's been fueling to the uncertainty is in 2023, there was the big writer's strike that kind of slowed down production in the industry. And then I feel like in 2024, there was almost a reverse strike from the studios where they kind of slapped back and withheld starting a lot of new productions. So I feel like 2024 was throttled, one, as sort of a, FU back to the strikes. And then two, I think the studios are all searching for a new bottom line and just cutting. Like, where's the bottom? And until they reach the bottom and find it, it's all just downhill right now. So unfortunately, my industry is not doing well, but that has given me a ton of time to pursue all of the creative endeavors that I kind of let go of in my 20s. So, 2 years ago, we did that radio play.
Was that too? Oh my
well,
God.
I guess it was like a year and a half, because it was like, I mean, you came over to record your lines, like 2 weeks after you had Sawyer or something?
I was maybe like 5 weeks postpartum. It was like 3 to 5 weeks postpartum. I was still very postpartum. I was very like, oh my God, I'm leaving the house. I had to bring my pump with me because I was like, I couldn't go more than a few hours without pumping. So I was like, okay, I can be at Kyle's for like X amount of time, and then I got to get out of there because I have to pump. Yeah, and we have like a picture or video of me recording my voice, and I'm very clearly like, it still looks like I'm pregnant a little bit. So yeah, it was like very early that we did that. So it probably was like a year and a half.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I remember not thinking about it too much at the time, just asking you, like, hey, like, I've really wanted you to do this. Now that you've had your baby, like, when are you going to be able to? And you're just like, you practically just came over and just recorded. And it was 10 pages of dialogue.
Oh my gosh.
It's like just, yeah, she like, so yeah, I feel like in the theme of the podcast, like had a baby and then just over recording, like just acting two characters. Like,
it was great to get out of the house. Like, it was so good. I was so glad that you asked me, because especially for me, I had such a traumatic birth experience and I was in this fog. And so when you were like, oh, can you come over and record? I'm like, yes, great. And it was such a good opportunity for me to do something that wasn't like my everyday, oh my God, taking care of a really, really tiny premature baby.
Right. Yeah, just come escape for a couple
just like
hours
take a little break.
Yeah.
I think Nat was probably at my house watching my son.
Probably.
In fact, I guarantee it.
Yeah, I remember when you did that. But Kyle, I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned, and Rachel, I like how you defined it as sort of feast or famine.
Yes.
That can be really stressful as a creative, and it can also be really draining to have a job that requires you to use your creativity. So I was wondering if you could talk about how you manage your creative energy and how you like maintain it as you're working on your passion projects, but then also looking for work and then also doing the work when it's there.
There needs to be a little bit of a switch. I was on set a couple weeks ago, and one of my buddies came up to me and he's like, so Kyle, like, are you able to turn it off when you're off set? And I kind of looked at him and was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the sound brain, it's like thinking about reverb and mic placement. He's like, can you turn all that off when you're off set? And I just kind of looked at him and was like, listen, like, I am off when I am on set. Like, I know how to place my mics. I know how to put lav mics on people. Like, that is all in here. All of those decisions can be made in my sleep at this point. Second nature. Right. So I don't have to think very hard when I'm on set when I'm on set now, I don't have to think very hard, which is great. And that kind of gives me space for the creative stuff, because I can just flip this switch where it's like, tomorrow I'm sound. So I'm going to think about lapel mics. I'm going to think about frequencies. I'm going to think about phasing. I'm going to think about noise cancellation and all that stuff. And then knowing that job is going to give me the money that's then going to give me like 5 days to write is what gets me through that day, where I'm just like, I'm here, I'm working. Like, I still really love doing sound, but it is not my passion. Storytelling is my passion. And every time I show up to work, it enables me to continue storytelling. And I think that's one of the biggest driving forces that allows me to continue to keep doing both, and funny enough, I went to the Taylor Swift concert when she was in Pittsburgh a year or 2 years ago, whenever that was. I have no sense of time since COVID.
I have no idea where I am.
Yeah, so
I'm like, sure, sounds about right.
Sounds good.
But it was Taylor Swift Eras Tour Pittsburgh. My friend gave me a ticket in exchange for staying at my house during that time. And I just remember she came out on stage, and I think Taylor Swift is 1 year older than me. And she goes, "We have 15 years of music to get through. Let's do this." And it just flipped this switch in my head where I was like, man, like, she has been putting out music for half of our life.
Like
you
half
know?
of her life. So
Right.
she's almost exactly, well, she's like a year, like she's 11 months younger than me.
Okay. Yeah.
Because her album 89, but she's barely an 89
yeah,
baby.
yeah.
Okay. I like Taylor Swift. She's barely an 89 baby though. She barely made it. She's December of 89. And I'm January of 89.
Okay.
Right. So like
Oh, that's a big,
there's like
yeah.
so she just turned 35 like a couple months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, she is the, like, probably still now, like, the biggest musician, like, of the current time frame. Yeah. And hated for years. Like, she had her small fan group, but she was just grinding, just putting stuff out, and then now she gets to reap the reward of it. And I had created this mental block in my brain where I was like, the first thing I'm going to put out is going to be perfect, like magnum opus, like this is going to change my life. And sort of broke that mentality during the Taylor Swift concert, honestly.
Wow.
Amazing.
I was like, wait a minute, look, no, I got to put something out. Don't make it perfect. Just, make it true to myself, get it out into the world, and know that it is not going to blow up.
Yeah.
It's just not,
This is something I talk about in therapy.
Yeah.
Seriously, I talk about this with my therapist because, like, I think about the Andy Warhol Museum for me, like, or any museum or any, like, exhibition of any particular artist. I love seeing their early work.
Yeah.
Like, I like going to the Warhol Museum and seeing, like, his pencil sketches that he did, or, like, his advertising work where he painted beautiful shoes. I like seeing that stuff. And he would never have gotten to, like, the ultra superstar status that he has and has had, without that early work. And there's still something there to love, but I hear what you're saying completely. Like, it is so hard for, anybody watching or listening. So I'm also a writer. I write poetry. I write a lot of things. That's part of my problem is, like, I can't really just pick a genre.
But I'll jump in there. So when I said, like, you know what? Let's make a movie for Dementia by Day. Let's make a movie. And you said, can I write the script? 3 days later, we had a script. I text him. I say, hey, you want to work on a movie with us? And immediately they're like, yes, great. Let me know when you have the script. I said, we already have it. I, like, sent it to you. You're like, oh, my God, this is like a finished script. I said, yeah, Nat jumped on it and, like, banged out a really great first draft of a script.
And I just want to say
immediately.
that, like, writing a good first draft in 3 days is impressive on its own. But then when we gave you notes and you turned it around, like, you made it shorter, but you put more into it. And that's something I've never been able to do as a writer.
Aw,
like,
thanks, guys.
my short films, they're always too much. It's always like I can't keep it just small and concise. And the short is so concise. It's beautiful.
They came out great, but it was a team effort. And honestly, like, I was able to do that because it's all Rachel's content, which I know, front and back now. Like, I can write, like,
She
from
is
Rachel's
me.
voice in my sleep.
She can, but that is a skill in and of itself, because it's really, really, really hard to bring on somebody to help, like, create content for you who can adapt and write in your voice, especially when you're writing. You have a way of speaking and a really niche is really hard.
And we were also writing down to the wire. Like, we needed, just for a little bit of context, there's a part in the short film which is called Embracing Their Reality.
We'll link it in the
Search it on YouTube.
we'll link it, but it's actually on the same YouTube that this is going to.
Yeah, exactly.
The video of this is on, but yes.
But there's a part where I had to jump in and ask you while we were filming, like, Rachel, can you make a face when you were talking about validation and redirection or whatever the other types of dementia communication were? Because, like, ultimately the message is this is a new thing that we want to show people about how to communicate with their loved ones. But I digress. What was I even going to say?
You're, like, on the fly.
Oh, yeah. That you know, like I tried to get it as tight as possible, but then there were still like game time decisions to make.
Having like people like Kyle and people who are in the industry.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a legit film crew at my house.
It was awesome.
For like 12 hours. Yeah. Like everybody. We had lights and sound and camera and the actors. I mean, we really like. I go big or I go home, right? And I'm not going home except for when we're filming for 12 hours at my
Go big
house.
and go
Go
home.
big and go
Go big,
home.
stay home.
But Kyle was worried when he was like, he had texted me and was like, is she open to notes? Or is this script like done? I said, oh yeah, she's open to notes. Because he was nervous about giving you notes.
I don't like to give notes unless that space is created, you know. It's like it's so easy to want to give somebody feedback on their special idea and they might not want it, you know.
But filmmaking is just so much more collaborative than most media, you know, and especially the writing aspect. So to me, I saw it as like a learning experience, and I just kind of put my like MFA workshop hat on, you know, and I just approached it the way that I would that. And also giving feedback is an art form. You know, you guys were very respectful and like nice and logical with all of your feedback. You weren't just like, ugh, I hate this. I hate this line.
sucks.
Delete this. And, like, there were people when I was in grad school who would just like slash through your page without a comment. And like, that's rude. You didn't say what's wrong with it. And like, I'm not going to listen to you. That's not good feedback. So giving feedback is also an art form.
Yeah, I take
it's hard to give. But you want the person who gives you feedback to come at it with like, they've created something before and then they're giving you feedback and they're giving it to you in a nice way. So it is like it's an art form to be able to give the feedback. But we're talking about at some point, I don't remember when. Of course, I have no idea like where I am or what time it is, but about how teaching is an art form, because we talk about this all the time. Like there are so many people who are just like, I'm gonna, get out. I'm gonna become a consultant and I'm gonna teach other people how to do a thing. The art of teaching is an art. Like you have to practice that. Speaking is an art form. Writing is an art form. Teaching is an art form. And I think people take these things for granted. And so they just go, I know how to write. I've been writing my name since I was, 5. I know how to write. And it's like, no, you freaking don't. Doesn't mean you can write a book. Right?
It's funny you say that because 4 or 5 years ago, I decided that I was going to write a sci-fi novel.
You are now.
I am, and I kept to it. But 4 years ago, when I sat down to write it, I realized I wasn't reading enough books. And I was like, how do you write a book when you don't read books? I don't know what a page looks like. I don't know how to format dialogue. Every sentence I write feels like trash. So I spent the whole year listening to as many audiobooks as I could get into my brain, just book after book after book. I think my cumulative listening time for that year was like 1 month or something like that. Wow. Just kept going, 30-hour books. I did the whole 3-body problem. That's like 100 hours of audiobook or something like that. It's a lot. But
reading is a huge part of writing.
Yeah. And then so 1 year later, I sat down again and then I had a writer's voice.
Yes.
It was like all of a sudden I could start to form sentences in character, and in hindsight, that draft is still trash, but it was 100 times better than the one I wrote before that. And then so a following year, sat down, wrote another draft. Now I have a full 80,000 word draft one.
That's
and
huge.
Thank you. Yeah. So I have to sit down starting this month and turn that into a draft 2 that I'm willing to show people, because right now there's too many moments where it's like, well, I'm going to change this and that's not that anymore. And this doesn't make any sense. But in my head, it's finally all there. And the other day, actually, so I know you don't like the AI stuff, right?
Oh my God. No. The only person who hates it more is me.
So I do think there is a line with the AI, because something you said where it's like, if you are using an AI to generate your finished product, do not call yourself an artist.
That's a call back to the first podcast episode. People, if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's pretty good.
Now, that being said, if you're an artist and you're not paying attention to these new AI tools that are coming out, you really should be. The example that I want to use is last week, I had an hour drive. I love listening to audiobooks when I drive. I have drafted one of my book, and I used a text-to-speech AI.
Yeah, Speechify.
It's
I
called
love
11
Speechify.
Labs.
Yeah.
It's probably it's probably the same tool at the end of the day, but it's it's you copy paste your book into it, but then when it reads it back, it actually has inflection. It can actually pause. It can actually like do some things. It's not perfect, but it is so much better than like having like a Google text-to-speech synthesizer read it. And what's cool is I've been doing this for about a year now, where I'll take my draft of a chapter, put it into this AI, and have it generate the audio. And I can catch spelling mistakes so much faster because the AI is like a Ron Burgundy. It will not subconsciously correct a mistake. It will read it exactly as is. So if
He
you
reads whatever's on the teleprompter.
exactly. So like if you read, what was interesting was I was listening to, my work, and certain parts I was like, oh, this isn't very good. The AI is like not reading it well. And other parts I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. I can't believe I wrote this, and came to the realization that like if you put good into the AI, it spits good out. If you put bad into the AI, it spits bad out. And it was kind of this moment of reflection where I was like, oh, like if I'm losing interest in the AI reading my novel to me, it's because my writing's not interesting, So that's been a huge tool as far as the creative process goes, because it's going to save me a ton of money on a proofreader. It's going to save me a ton of money on an editor, because I'm going to have a lot of those little things handled, and I'll have already been able to proof what it's going to sound like as an audiobook before I even like call it done. Now I'll never publish an audiobook with a AI narrator.
Hell no.
Especially because I did that on the radio play that we did, and discovered that working with an AI is not any easier than working with an actor.
Really? But you did it very purposefully. You set out to use AI to see if you could make it similar to having like a human voice actor.
Yeah, and what's wild is that with how fast all this AI stuff is changing, when I made this, there was no conversation about the controversy of AI. It was like people still weren't even having that conversation. So by the time I got the podcast into the world, we were just starting to talk about, is this right? Did they get their training data like ethically? Like we weren't even having those conversations, and that was only like a year and a half ago. But going through that, it was like when I'm working with you, we'll do a take. I'll give you instruction. You'll do it differently. And then, I'll take the 5 takes and I'll splice every single sentence and word together to get the final performance. And I had to do the same thing with the AI.
Really?
It's like,
okay.
And not only did I have to do it with the AI, I had to rewrite all of the dialogue into prose. I had to add, so like, if the character's like, oh, like I really like my food, like I have to take that line, put it in dialogue quotes, and then say like, I was so hungry, and then I said, and then it'll like, by putting the dialogue, that's a terrible example, honestly. I wish I had prepared one.
No,
but
it's okay.
By putting dialogue tags around my dialogue, it was giving the AI narrator direction, and it was changing the way that they were delivering the lines. So I would have to rewrite scenes of this radio play in prose, generate it, import that reading, cut all the prose out so it was just back to the dialogue, and then line all that up so that it sounded like the AI was acting with Rachael.
Oh my God, that's like worse. That's like acting with a really bad actor. That would be like if you had a
yeah.
really bad actor who couldn't take direction.
That's exactly what it was, because you have to basically give the AI, like you want to give it a line reading, and now there's a version where I could essentially record me delivering the line how I want, and then I could put it into the AI and say it like Rachael, and it would say it like with your voice. Yeah.
That is creepy.
Yeah, no, it's honestly like I strongly encourage, like even if you hate AI, you need to be paying attention to what it can do, because the rate at which we are getting like closer to photorealistic video is astronomical. It's like the AI world changes on a weekly basis. There's no like, oh, I wonder what it's going to be like next month. Like, no, what's it going to be doing next week? It's moving so fast right now. It does, and it should. It honestly should scare all of us, and I don't think any of us are as scared of it as we should be, because there was one teeny tiny push by the Biden administration to do something about AI at the end of his thing, which to me just felt like they were ensuring that the Republicans were going to be pro AI at the end of his term by just like swooping in and trying to do this anti-AI thing at the end. It was like, it felt really irresponsible for them to just try to slip in something at the end of his term.
Yeah, yeah, we need some. I mean, we need a lot of legislation that we don't have clearly, but one of them is about AI. But
I was just going to jump in and say that I want to rewind to what you were saying about listening to your book being read to you by like a Speechify equivalent thing. I'm not rescinding my comment about AI. But that's not the meat and potatoes, right? Like you didn't use the AI to write your book.
correct.
Right.
And like I said, like I used Speechify. Gwyneth Paltrow has read my book to me, and it was way easier. Reading aloud is a great way to find errors and to find like awkwardness, like you were saying, you know, to hear dialogue that just sounds wrong. And it's exhausting to do it yourself, to read an 80,000 word novel.
And it doesn't always work,
You know?
too. It's like you get, like you said, you get tired. Your brain just starts to let stuff go.
You elide, you know, over words, like you were saying, you just kind of like your eyes glaze over them. But recently there was a controversy on TikTok where somebody had downloaded an ebook and they had accidentally left their AI prompt in their self-published ebook. They said, rewrite this scene where so-and-so sounds funnier and more sexy or something like
Which is
that.
total bullshit.
You know?
Because that's
So
writing
that's
them
more
for
what I'm
them.
talking about. Or even like another argument that I've seen on TikTok. I wish I could remember. There's this one lady I follow who works in publishing. And she also talks about using AI to solve the problems of your characters, which I also think you're like, then you don't want to be a writer is basically what she said, which I thought was so smart. You know, like that's a great argument against using AI to like, you know, create conflict in your story. You're not doing that. Like you're using it to listen to your book and improve upon it. I just think that that's more of like the exception to the rule, if you know what I mean.
And I think there's a line too, you know, because if it's like rewrite my scene to make this character sound sexier, like that's, you know, at that point, it's like that book was written by you and ChatGPT, you know,
But mostly ChatGPT.
right. But so the podcast radio play that we did, it's unfinished. There's no end to the story because I decided I was going to produce it and just get it out into the world rather than make it perfect.
Good.
Yeah.
So I do eventually need to go back and finish the end for that.
I'll come back in.
100%, yes. So
I'll
I've
be
been
back.
writing it, and as I've been writing it, part of my story involves a space elevator on Mars. So to write this space elevator scientifically accurate, or at least as scientifically accurate as like I'm capable of doing, I had this huge like day-long conversation with ChatGPT of like, so what would it take to construct a space elevator on Mars? How fast would it go? Like what, like to create artificial gravity as it's going down? How fast does it have to be moving? How long would that take? What are the angles? This, that, and the other. And at least in my mind, I was able to create a not very realistic version, but a like based in truth version of what a Martian space elevator would feel like.
Do you trust that ChatGPT told you the truth though?
You know what's interesting is that whenever I know a lot about what I'm asking ChatGPT, I find that it is confidently wrong a lot of the time.
Uh-oh.
And I think that because a lot of us are asking things that we don't know, it just answers with confidence, and we just kind of assume that it knows what it's talking about.
Right.
You know, there's not a version of ChatGPT that will be like, I don't think I actually know the answer to that. Here's something I think it is, but you should go research more. Like, there's not a version that does that right now. It will answer confidently whether it is right or wrong. If it's something like math, it tends to be right. If it's something like art, it tends to be wrong.
That makes sense, right? Because like if it's grounded in like hard facts, hard science of like that 1 + 1 = 2, it can do that all day.
Right.
But if there's some nuance to it, it can't reproduce this. I feel like this podcast episode is a lot about getting a version of what you're doing out into the world. Like this episode feels to me like talking about the idea of like creating something and getting it out there and not being obsessed with, is it perfect? Because you can't hustle any harder than this. How many projects do you have going on right now or within like a short time frame that you've done?
I made a list of projects I could talk about on this show, and I think it was 7.
Oh my God. What are they?
So there's my science fiction book.
1.
I'm slowly figuring out how to do a second book, which is going to be an audio technical guide. So all of my sound mixer knowledge. I have a game/app called Save Toasty that I drew/did the sound for.
What? 3.
Yeah, so that you can download. It's on the App Store and Apple Play. Save Toasty. It's a little piece of bread.
Amazing.
What else? We have our radio play.
Yeah, 4.
That's currently on pause just because I can't figure out the end, but that'll come back around. We have our movie,
5.
which we'll talk more about in a second here.
Yep.
And what am I forgetting?
You also, I feel like, didn't you just create a new Instagram or something?
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So last night I just
Yeah, because it followed me. I was like, who the hell is this? And I heard your voice. I was like, Kyle doing another thing.
Yeah. So why is this little red cube following me? So 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to learn how to do 3D animation and started doing it as a hobby and created this project and spent 7 years just working towards achieving this animated short. It was going to be a 12-minute animated short. It was going to be 360 degrees, so you could you could choose where you look during the short. All of my characters are shapes. My main character is a red cube. And as I was pursuing this project, I have this thing, I call it circle theory, where progress is a circle. So you start and you start making your progress and you're learning and you're going on the adventure of creativity, and you get to what is essentially the end, which is also the beginning, because by the time you get there, you've gotten so much better along the journey that everything you did in the beginning, you just kind of look at and you're like, am I really going to put that out into the world? No, I need to redo this. So then you start on the journey again. And unfortunately, I think it just keeps going. And I got stuck in this cycle for 6 years of, no, I can make it better. No, I can make it better. No, I can make it better. And then I never was able to finish it because I just kept making the project too big, and I lost sight of the scope of what I, one person, am able to do. And in the world of animation, it's not very much because there's just so much that goes into all of these little things. So I set that project down for 2 years, allowed myself creative space to start building new things because I was hyper-focused on it for so long that I wasn't allowing myself any other project space. So eventually when I set that project down, that's where the podcast came from, because I now had all this time to work on that. That's where the movie Chelsea that we're working on came from.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. And don't forget all the 48-hour film festivals that you've done.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested in my short film side, you can follow Bad Dates _crew. That's where we're making our movie right now. Yep. We started a found footage movie about a year ago. My friends and I made a short film. It did really well. It's a mockumentary. And then after we got done making the short, we all had so much energy and momentum that I kind of hijacked it and was like, let's go. Let's just start a feature film right now.
Oh my gosh.
So we wrote, we didn't have a script. We had 5 pages of a feature the first day we shot. And I just called Rachael and I was like, meet me out on Mount Washington. My friend's going to propose to you and you're going to say no in the most awkward way possible. And we showed up and we shot for 3 hours.
It was so cold too.
It was
November.
So cold.
It was November.
Yeah.
We didn't want it to be that cold, so we had to keep, Chris and I kept taking our coats on and then taking them off.
Yeah, you don't look cold in the short, but
that's good because we were cold as hell.
Yeah, it was freezing. Yeah, so we knocked that day out, and then it was 3 months later, I was able to convince my guy friends to get back together. We shot a couple more pages, did that a couple times over the year, and then towards the end of last year, we finally had enough movie shot where I could edit it together and show everybody, and then now everybody's pretty excited about it. And we have a half hour of movie completed.
Crazy.
The goal is probably 90. We'll likely end up more in the 70 realm because we don't have any money and we're trying to scrape this thing together for literally $0. Micro budget in the film world is $1 million or less, so we're absolute no budget. I'm paying for all the meals out of my pocket when I can. it's been a lot. Everyone's donating their time, but I think we're gonna end up with something kind of special at the end. And the micro feature is the new short film. If you want to direct feature films, you can no longer show up with a short film and be like, "Look, I'm ready to make my feature." You have to show up with a micro feature that you basically self-funded and scraped together and begged for favors, and you're essentially showing like, I can scrape together a movie with nothing, so give me a little bit of something so that I can like make a real one.
I think it's gonna be great. I'm
Yeah.
excited about it.
I'm really excited too. Yeah. And then just because we are taking so much time making it, there's a new big monster sequence at the end that you don't even know about. And we're in talk, like we have an effects guy that I'm talking to. It's actually the guy who he did some of the Terrifier 3
Oh my
effects. He's in Pittsburgh, and I met him on a shoot.
Well,
So I'm talking to him. I really want him to do our monster, and then I'm learning how to do the effect where you have a practical puppet, but then you layer CG on top of it to make it look a little bit more realistic. So that's the goal, is to do practical with CG enhancements.
Kyle, you do a lot of hustling.
I can't hustle any harder than this.
You can't hustle any harder than this.
he said it.
He said it. I think that brings us to the end of our episode here. Kyle, thanks for being on the show
Yeah,
today.
thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
And all the amazing amount of projects that you are.
Got a lot going on. I'm hoping.
Juggling.
I'm hoping a year from now I have this kick-ass portfolio that I can use to jump into the next career.
I'm confident you will.
I
Thanks.
second that.
I hope so.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Thanks.